Thank you everyone for being on the panel. We really appreciate it. And let's dive into some of those partnerships that Allison mentioned that are kind of key to success in the Milwaukee education landscape. Hank, I want to start with you, and maybe if you could share a little bit more about MPE, your background, and in your partnership with GPS and Whitefish Bay High School. How did that come about? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? Yeah, those kind of things.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Hank Cole. I'm the CEO of MPE Inc. We're a design manufacturing organization for medical device, really leading in high-tech innovations and medical device technology. And as you said earlier, I'm from Germany originally, and I grew up in an environment where there was a really close collaboration between industry and education. When I came here to start this business, I was rather appalled and shocked at how disconnected those two industries were. And I saw that in the quality of the candidates we were looking at hiring in our organization, either in factory level or professional level, et cetera. So through that, we started looking out in the community about who could we partner with to help solve for this and get a little bit more involved. Met up with the GPS Education Partners group, and we put an ed center in one of our locations, one of our facilities, with the idea that we could bring the experiences of manufacturing and in working in a job every day to these high school students and give them that exposure. One of the things I've noticed is that in today's world, technology is moving so quickly that this gap between education and industry is growing as a result of educators really can't keep up with this technology that we're deploying, developing, and using every day. And how can we give that exposure of the technology we're using to these kids to grow up? So by putting this ed center in, we were able to bring those kids closer to the action, closer to what we're doing, get them exposed to what the market really needs to make them employable. And then through that, the various high schools in the area have come in, and that's where we've got to meet. And some of the kids from the various schools are coming in our area, getting that exposure, working closely on the curriculum side of that to give them the basic learning, but then showing them how those learnings can be applied in a daily basis and why it's important to learn what they have.
Amy, maybe you could share a little bit more about how you guys work with GPS and MPE and having students at MPE learning, doing schoolwork, all the above. How'd that partnership come about? How's it working for you guys?
The partnership for us came about 4 years ago. For those of you who know Whitefish Bay High School, we're a comprehensive school. We serve 9 through 21, and our job is to serve all kids, general education, special education. And what we were finding was that we were in our pursuit of having every student have an academic and career plan. There was a small number of students that we knew we were missing. I mean, that's sort of the bottom line. We knew we had a gap. And we were approached by GPS as a possible partnership, and it absolutely spoke to everything that was missing for some of our students, particularly relevance. If you haven't spent time lately with 900 and some odd teenagers, relevance for them is more important than ever, and especially for some, they needed to see something besides a direct path straight out of college and or straight out of high school and into college, which for us is the direct path for about 90% of our students. So again, that was just a really strong need. And so ultimately, the GPS partners are this really the conduit between the two of us. They have a well-established program for application and acceptance, and in fact, I think 2 nights ago, 4 of our students received their acceptance letters, so they were very excited about that. And essentially what happens is the students, either junior or senior year, they go to the education center in the morning and do standards-based work, job-embedded work that they can see the application of immediately in the afternoon, where they then go and go through various rotations of work. And what's a really important part of this partnership, I think, is that they receive a Whitefish Bay High School diploma, so it's they come back and graduate with their class. They receive all the same services in terms of counseling services, special education oversight if they have an IEP for a case manager, because we work so closely with the education center at GPS. And then another just important part, I think, for high school kids is that they can stay involved with their school community and any extracurricular activities. The work environment is really flexible, and I know that mattered a lot for the 4 that just got accepted. They want to stay with the sense of belonging of their peers, their wrestlers, and so you have to think about when you're thinking about partnering with schools, like how can you make that possible too? Because their workday doesn't end at 5 o'clock. Their school workday ends around 3:15, but then they have this whole other part of their school day that matters in terms of becoming who they are as young adults. So that level of flexibility is also really important. So, and we have a couple students who, GPS has also worked out the transportation with between the educational center and the work environment if they're not necessarily exactly in the same building. So it's just been a really great problem-solving venue to make both possible.
Mm-hmm. Switch over to Danny and your role at Carmen and partnership with Carrie and her team. Because what's your day-to-day work like, and how are your two organizations partnered together?
Well, day-to-day is always interesting. It's education. We all wear a lot of hats. This morning I was driving students to their internship and interviewing a part-time driver, gassing up the van, having a partnership conversation in the mid-morning. We kind of do it all. But so Carmen Schools of Science and Technology is a nonprofit public charter here in Milwaukee with 3 high schools, 2 middle schools, and an elementary school, serving students on the north and south side. And in the career readiness work that we do, we really think about it in 3 areas. Career exploration, skill development, and social capital, all of which we think are really critical to students being successful in their pursuit of future careers. And so, with Carrie and Amplify Graphics, it really started with a site visit last year. We're fortunate to have a fleet of vans, which I think, you mentioned transportation and the complications that can provide when it comes to getting students to these experiences. You can have all the great partnerships in the world, but if you don't have a bus or a car or a van to get them there, it can add complications. So, we've really ramped up our site visits a lot, staying very busy, getting our vans out there to different companies like Amplify. And from that site visit and the chance for local organizations like Amplify to meet some of our kids and kind of start to visualize what it looks like to have a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old in your work environment, you start to become more comfortable with that idea, once you're actually talking to the kids that you might be hosting. And so, Amplify was a great example of something that starts with that site visit, really starts with that kind of volunteerism lens and evolves into more of that talent strategy and hosting an intern and really giving that more of that in-depth experience with what the workday can look like, what the jobs are that are out there. So many of our kids latch on to the 2 or 3 career paths that they've been told about or that they have in their family and really have no understanding of the multitude of career pathways that they can go on. Many of those careers don't exist yet, right? And that's part of this, is setting kids up with those essential skills that they're going to need no matter what the pathway is to pursue jobs that, again, may not yet exist. So really grateful for this partnership and all of our partners, and seeing things grow from that site visit experience, that volunteerism experience. Yesterday and the day before, we did mock interviews with all of the freshmen at our South Campus. And I'm happy to talk with more of you during the roundtable session about what it looks like to sign up for that. And a lot of our partners come through that lens, right? They get to meet a 9th grader and get to know Carmen a little bit and get to learn a little bit more about what we do and become a little bit more comfortable with, working through that work-based learning continuum and moving on from those classroom-based exploration opportunities through those really business-led opportunities like apprenticeship programs and the work that's happening at GPS Education Partners. So, very grateful.
Carrie, maybe touch a little bit about Amplify, about the business, because you're not Northwestern Mutual in terms of size and scale, but any company can be involved in this, any size. Tell us about that and kind of how this has developed for you over the years.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was one point that I wanted to bring up. I'm honored and blessed to be here and represent the smaller corporations in Milwaukee. Many of you might have known us as West Dallas Blue. We were known as that for many, many years. We just recently, about 1.5 years ago, changed the company name to align more with the services that we now offer. As we've grown and pivoted and changed throughout the years, we're an environmental branding company. We help people experience their environments. Really fortunate to have met Danny through a networking event and start with the site survey like he had mentioned. We do only employ, on average about 20-25 people a year. So we're truly here representing the fact that small businesses can take be a part of this program and make a difference as well. Really excited to have our intern this year too through the program. Worked out really well. He's a go-getter. He's an entrepreneur, and it's fun to see the education that the children are receiving in high school and translate that into a business environment. More like it's an honor, to have these kids be a part of the program and to do our part to give back a little bit. even as a small company, there's only so many things that we financially can do. We're not Northwestern Mutual, as you mentioned. But this is our small part to give back to the community, and it's really been a key initiative for us. We're part of the MMAC as well, and attracting and retaining the talent that's in Milwaukee is also really important to small businesses in Wisconsin and Milwaukee in particular. And again, honored to be here and kind of represent that small slice, business in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. And folks have probably seen some of your company's work on like Fiserv Forum, right? That the big branding on the outside and the glass. That's your
Wait
team.
to see the Milwaukee Brewers stuff this year. It's really fun.
We'll keep an eye out.
Yeah, opening day is less than a month away.
We got warm thoughts. Much better weather this year than last. Wanted to maybe just, I guess, as you guys have developed partnerships working together, what's kind of the learning curve like? I mean, we heard from Allison before, for business, don't come in with your own agenda of how you think things need to go and things need to be. What's that learning curve like of working together, bridging that gap between an education world that has to do what it needs to do and a business world that operates just differently in a lot of ways? What's the learning curve of partnership?
I can feel that. So for us, the learning curve was really just understanding what Danny and his goals were for the students. Also sitting down with the students directly and figuring out what their ideas were and perceptions of what an internship should look like. We're fortunate enough to have the capability to open up all of our positions, basically. So with our intern in particular, he's been working with every single facet of our company, from our delivery driver to sales to production, and it just kind of gives them the background of all the different possibilities out there. Danny had mentioned a lot of the students might not know a lot of what goes on behind the scenes. And that's really one thing that we strive to do with our site visits with the students, is give them an idea of, just all the different possibilities that are out there and all the opportunities that are really open to them. We do a fun strategic project with them, if you will, and ask them to go through what they think, a process of, a customer placing an order is to fulfilling that order. And it's really interesting to see how they deliberate and work together as a group to kind of come up with that. And it offers a different perspective, if you will, behind the scenes that they don't get to see.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could add a little bit to that. And one of the things we found we needed to do was also educate our organization, what we're doing and why we're trying to do that, so that we could align mentors and other people associated with these students coming in the organization on applying what they're learning, how to act, what to do, where to go, et cetera, and creating that connection between them within your organization, and understanding that they have a bit of a purpose, and being a contributor here was part of improving our process also.
On our side, it's a lot like with our students. We really want to meet our partners where they're at. We do a lot up front to try to set our partners up for success. We make sure that there's an interview process that's obviously very beneficial for our students. This past year we had about 100 applications for our student internship program. About 70 of those students got to go through our professionalism training, go through the interview process. And we currently have 31 placements across Milwaukee, a number we hope to grow. But that process in and of itself is really valuable for our students to have those experiences. And then with our partners, making sure we're providing them with examples, making sure we're connecting them to other companies that have hosted interns. We're fortunate to have a real wide range of partners, from smaller nonprofits like the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music and larger corporations like Baird and Northwestern Mutual. And so making sure we have those best practices in place, making sure they have a chance to talk to the student, making sure we're being thoughtful about the pairing of the student with the organization. Sem is a really great young man who wants to own his own small business someday. So you hear that, you got Amplify on the list, it makes sense. And so really just making sure we're taking the steps up front to set our partners up for success. Fortunate to have also, a good partnership with Mentor Greater Milwaukee. Betty from that organization is always great, sharing her time with us up front to do some training with our supervisors and set them up for success, oftentimes potentially working with a student population that they maybe haven't before. And so making sure that we're providing those tools and resources so that, our partners are walking into this confident and prepared, not nervous and scared.
Mm-hmm.
I think the couple things that come to mind, communication's been covered, mentorship has been covered, that's huge. Really strong communication with the school is important, but then just being honest with yourself about what works in those first 2 years and what doesn't work in those first 2 years, because any partnership is going to have, you know, a couple bumps in the road, and so then just learning from those, and especially when you're working with high school kids, they have a vision of lots of things, so I think what you know, or what they expect out of something. I think, you know, always having a site visit, being really honest with them about expectations and keeping those expectations really high for students. And if it doesn't work, you know, they're paired with the school where they're homeschool, you know, and that's okay too. And that's a life lesson, right? We're trying to make them ready for life, college, and career. So I think just establishing those parameters really early helped us out too.
What maybe do successful outcomes look like, and what are some of the keys to getting there? What does success look like in these partnerships, and how do you make it work?
I think a couple different things you look at. One is, as a business leader, we need to look at this as something we owe back to the community. It can't be self-serving just for your organization. And success is that we're giving this back to the community, we're making everything stronger. Seeing these young students thrive and come out of an environment where they may not have been as successful in their traditional learning, going through this process and seeing them awake and become real people and be productive immediately within our organizations, fit into the organization, see them have a pathway forward for a career in whatever that may be in manufacturing. And I think another part of this is just educating more of these kids that there are more pathways to success than traditional education, college, and a job forever. I think, again, I talk about technology, and I think we need to think about, because technology is moving so quickly, that your educational process never changes, and we can look at things differently, that we can go through a traditional education in K through 12, we can go through a 2-year program or an apprenticeship program within an operation, and then we can go to the next level of education, whatever that may be. And I think this type of career path planning and thought process can open up the avenue for significantly more students to be successful versus the low graduation rates that we heard about, or transfer rate from K through 12 to university, I think can be thought of differently. And I think the market needs to think of it that way differently, primarily because of how fast technology is changing.
I think it can take a lot of different forms on our side, especially, you know, for our students. For some, it might be eliminating a career path, right? You know, some of these experiences may be something that actually a student was dead set on a certain pathway, and then they dig deeper and they get to have that experience, and they decide that's not for them, and that's just as valuable for, you know, a student that may have spent years going down an education pathway that ultimately leads them to something that wouldn't have made them happy or fulfilled. And then there's, you know, those other sides of the coin where we're starting to see students who were sophomores, juniors with us when they started in the high school internship program, who are now college interns at those same organizations and are all set up for a job when they graduate. And, you know, seeing that real talent pipeline component of these programs start to actually play out, you know, seeing those students evolve from a high school intern into a full-time employee. And everything in between, right? And, you know, just helping kids better understand what's out there, and all of these experiences, whether or not, you know, that student that maybe eliminated a career path is still developing those essential work readiness skills that they're going to need simply by being in that environment and being around professionals on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. What maybe are some best practices in working together? The day-to-day, you know, you mentioned driving the van, having to gas it up, doing the interview. But what are some of the best practices in making these partnerships go and not fizzle out after, you know, maybe a lot of hope at the start and it tails off? What makes it work?
Well, it starts with commitment, I think, first off, right? This isn't a flash in the pan. You need to have a plan. You need to look forward to that. And you need to then also align and be realistic, like Amy said earlier, about what the outcomes are and what your expectations are. And to your point, too, I think a lot of these kids come into this program thinking they want one thing, and they realize there's other opportunities to them, and they can learn from that.
You touched on it a little bit earlier. I think regular and honest reflection and communication is really important. You know, our kids and our supervisors are filling out a reflection form each day that they have their interns, and it provides the space to flag anything that's coming up that's an issue that needs to be talked about, reflecting on, you know, what did the student do that day? How did they do? And from the student's perspective, like, what did you do today? And just making sure that we're continuing to have those conversations. And if an issue comes up, or if a student is not working out in a certain setting, making sure that we're talking about that and getting out in front of any issues that come up.
I think celebration is an important one. Like back at school, we do that. And I went to a few events, which was really important for the students who were placed there, but then bringing them back in and hold it, like almost like we'd host a college visit, hosting our own students as now the experts in another path to a high school diploma that's still connected to Whitefish Bay High School. I'm confident they were our biggest recruiters for now doubling the number of students involved in just 3 years.
What about the role of just that, talk about communication. Is it, just free flowing, or is it important to have like a point person? Here's the person responsible, here's the point of contact, kind of on both sides of the equation to make sure messages aren't getting lost, priorities aren't getting confused, that kind of thing?
We do have a point person that works very closely with me and Danny to make sure that nothing's falling through the cracks. There is a lot of email communication that goes back and forth, and we obviously don't want to miss any of that. But I do think that would be a best practice to have someone kind of in charge of it and overseeing the responsibilities and the day-to-day of what the intern is doing at our company, as well as making sure we fill out the supplemental information that they're looking for as well, that we're staying on track and keeping that line of communication open as we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd echo the importance of that point of contact. I think the fact that my job exists is unique, right? There's not a lot of schools and organizations that have someone who's really focused on the career readiness and partnership component. And a lot of this work really starts at the classroom level. It's a passionate science teacher that's doing a project in their class, and they're looking for volunteers to judge it. They're, these little pockets of success throughout the city where these things then grow and evolve. But I do think that primary point of contact is definitely a best practice, and also one of the biggest barriers, right? Not every company has someone who can dedicate that much time and capacity to internships and site visits and planning these partnerships with educators and with schools and vice versa. We've got a principal up here, right? There's a lot of other jobs that on the plate beyond this, and so having that focused, intentional effort and a person who's doing that is really valuable and really helpful, and also rarely the case.
Mm-hmm. Amy, when we were meeting before this, you talked about the importance of adult advocacy kind of all the way around. You just mentioned, I think, being at MPE and seeing, a student, was someone working, I think, on the shop floor with him, kind of giving them a kick in the rear end to be on time for something or things like that. What's the importance there of just everyone kind of involved? And yes, there's a point person, but the importance of just everyone involved kind of pushing forward to help, students find their path.
Oh, it's huge. You talk about, you never know if you're going to be the person for a student. You don't know. And, having trusted adults in kids' lives is a huge source of strength. It's a huge piece of their resilience, especially with students right now. But yeah, I had a young man giving me a tour of MPE, and he, introduced this coworker as his mom at work. And I thought that was just perfect, a very perfect explanation. But I think it goes to what Hank was saying about readying the company too for bringing on these students and knowing that that's okay, and that's what they need. And it was perfect. He was just glowing.
Hank, that culture piece, just getting the company culture ready, changing the culture to embrace this when you've got business priorities everywhere. You're a future 50 fast-growing company. How'd you go about kind of that cultural piece of getting everyone ready, getting everyone on that same page to push forward on that front when there's plenty of competing priorities?
Within the organization, it's actually pretty simple. At the top is where it becomes a little bit more complicated to make a financial commitment. But at the factory level and our organizational level, when we went out to our team and said, listen, here's the problem we're trying to solve. Everyone here is looking for better coworkers to come in and help us, our organization, grow. I want you to be part of that, and we're going to bring these kids in who are looking for leaders to help them grow. They're committed to wanting to be in manufacturing, a career you've chosen, guys, in our company. Would you embrace that? Would you help, and would you commit to that? And almost unanimously across the organization, everyone said yes. And they've really embraced and actually look forward to sign up to work with these kids and teach them how to weld, teach them how to run different equipment, teach them how to assemble, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of a source of pride for them to be able to share it with these up-and-coming individuals.
Mm-hmm. Carrie, any thoughts there on just the challenge of like the A, the culture, and B, we got to get the Brewers opening day graphics ready, versus supporting an intern and a student?
Very similar story to yours. When we just started talking about our community outreach program and what that would look like and what we wanted it, to entail and what we wanted involved in it, we sat down with the team as a whole and came up with some different, ideas and alternatives for what we could do to give back to the community. And one of them was bringing in interns, again, the attract and retain the talent in Milwaukee, and everybody bought in and was very supportive of that initiative, and to this day still supports it. And we regularly meet once a month to make sure that, we're all still on the same page and moving that community outreach program forward and continuing to add to it as well.
Absolutely. Well, we're just about out of time for this panel. All four of these folks will be part of our roundtables in the second portion of the program. So if you want to learn more about their partnerships and how they're working together, stop by one of those sessions. There's also plenty of other roundtables. So thank you all for being up here and sharing your experiences.